Hey everybody, we had a quick question to see if we could upload a few more things that some of you guys have seen the camera tool get used for, and really the 3D environment get used for too. So we're going to create a little room and then fly a camera around it really quick. So we're going to do that by doing a new solid. Sorry, things fly off my screen. I'm going to name this back. We'll just do back for like back wall. I'm going to kick on my motion blur and my 3D, and I am going to shove this back, right? This is going to be the back wall. I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to rename this left. I'm going to rotate it. It's going to be on the Y because I want it to be obviously the left wall. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, and I'm going to bring it to the left. Just kind of match this middle point up to where this is. It's not going to be perfect, but it really doesn't matter if it's perfect. We'll make our adjustments later. And then I need to move the position, Z position, closer to me. Close enough? And we can always extend this, scale this out and up so it makes our wall bigger. I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to rename that right. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. I'm going to duplicate that. Oops, I already duplicated it. Left 2, I'm going to rename to right. Duplicating, by the way, Control D on a PC, Apple D on a Mac. I'm going to move this wall to this side. Okay. I'm going to make a light just so we can see how this is going to line up here. So I'm going to go to New, Light, and I'm going to make a point light, and 95% intensity is fine. I'm going to set cast shadows on. Fall off. I'm not really sure the difference in this. I'm going to set it smooth because that sounds better. Probably make for some smoother shadows. Ask for diffusion. I'll keep that as default 100% 100 pixels as of now. I think if you increase the diffusion amount, it obviously makes your lights softer. So I'm going to hit OK. We'll see what happens. Everything's black, so that's not a great start. Let's go into our custom view and see what that light is. Okay, so it's too far forward. I'm going to move it back towards that back wall, see what that looks like. Okay, so we're kind of seeing, I just don't think it's strong enough, so I'm going to kick my intensity up. And bring it closer to us. I wonder if casting shadows and smooth fall off. Yep, smooth fall off was our problem. Okay, we won't do smooth because that obviously makes our radius look awfully weird. So you can see there's some shadows here. I think that might be because I might just have to adjust where these walls sit. I'm going to bring my light kind of closer to camera maybe. Just kind of put it right in the middle. If I go to my top view, you can kind of see how these are aligning. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to bring this guy over, which is my Z on here. And I'm going to scale this guy out. Just scale him up so my walls go past here. Because all I really want to care about is the view inside of here. So my light's kind of about the center. Let's make our other walls here. We'll go back to my active camera. By the way, when you guys are working in your viewport here, if you hit Shift, or I'm sorry, spacebar and hold it, it brings up this hand icon, and you can click and drag around your view to see things a lot easier. So if like I'm looking at my top view, I can hit my spacebar and click, zoom out and move around and see stuff a lot easier that way. So hitting spacebar and holding it allows you to move around much easier. Okay, so we got that. Let's take our background. We'll duplicate that. We'll name it floor. God, that's getting annoying. I don't know why it's doing that. We'll name it floor. And we'll rotate that on the y-axis, or x-axis, 90 degrees. Bring it down. And I'm just going to scale it. You can move it, scale it. Doesn't matter if it goes on for infinity past that. So I'm going to do the same with my walls here. scoot this back just a little bit more. And we could scale this up and just not have a ceiling. But let's do a ceiling. Just because we can. So I'll duplicate that wall. And I'll name this roof, ceiling, whatever you want to name it. That's going to be an X as well. Actually, let's do this. Let's just delete that. Let's just duplicate the floor, and we'll just move it up. That's easier. Okay, so now we have our room, right? So we can go into our light and make adjustments if we want to kick this down to maybe 90. Actually, I don't like that it. Let's do this. Let's do 60. And let's push this back to right at the end of the wall, and let's duplicate the light, and we'll bring this one closer to us. So I am selecting until it says Z on my cursor. And that tells me I'm going to only move it on the Z axis, or you can go down to here and adjust our position. Okay, so now we got 2 lights in here, which looks good. Maybe we'll shift one to the left and maybe one to the right, just to kind of. Actually, I like the way that looks on this one. I might duplicate this one. Just slide it over. So now we have 2 lights in here. Kind of like the way those lights fall off. Okay, cool. Looks good. So now let's place some text in here and see what happens. Actually, let's get our camera up. So let's go to New Camera, and right now I have it set to 15. That's pretty wide. I'll set it to 24. We want kind of a wider camera. I want depth of field on. Everything else looks good. Okay, so now you can see it widened out our viewing angle here, which is fine. And let's go get our text layer in here. I'm just going to name it camera. And I'm just going to align everything to center. I'm going to get my center point or center anchor point in my layer content so it's dead center. And I'm going to kick on all my 3D stuff. So I have my menu here to set where it just shows everything, just because I've got a bunch of monitors when I work and I have the room. So if something you see is not here, there's a toggle switches down here that may flip this to the menu you need. So I'm going to kick on motion blur and 3D for my camera layer here. And I'm going to dive down into this because I don't want to accept the light on this because I don't want to see the shadows. If I push this back towards where my lights are, you can kind of see it. It shows up as white, which is fine, but I just want to make sure that when it's moving, I don't want to see any shadows or black or anything. So I'm just going to set accept lights to off so it's always nice and white. Except shadows on, cast shadows, I want that to be on because I want to be able to see the shadows from it on the wall. So I'll push this back in Z space here. And let's go to my top view just so I can see where everything is. So I've got my 2 lights here, and I may duplicate those again. And we'll do like a 4 lights kind of on the ceiling type thing. So I'm going to duplicate both of those and then move them up over here. We'll see where my camera is. My camera's way back here. And then I'm going to take my text layer and put it kind of right in the middle of where these lights are located. Okay. There we go. Okay. So now having 4 lights in here really blows the place up with light. So let's do this. Let's just select these and we'll change these to maybe 30%. 30%. 30%. 30%. Okay, so that's a little bit better. So now with our camera, if we want to fly around this, you can't really see any of the shadows at the moment. Wonder if we have to adjust our material options on our layers down here. So these are set to accept shadows, not cast shadows. That might be up in our lights. I wonder if we have our settings correct in our lights. Cast shadows is off. We want these to be on. Okay, so now you can see when I turn that on, we got a little bit of shadow here. We'll turn cast shadows on for these lights. I turned those off after we were getting that weird stuff in the beginning. So, okay, so now we have our shadows on. You can kind of see the shadows here if I move this guy around. Oops. You can kind of see what happens to these shadows, right? Pretty cool. Okay, so let's do a camera movement. Let's set my camera. If I go to my top view, I'm going to set my camera so my point of interest lines up with this layer here. Okay, so I'm just going to take that and extend it out until it lands right on where that text layer is. So now I know that if I move my position left or right, it's always going to stay locked on that text layer, right? So if we go to my active camera and we grab our camera tool, we orbit, maybe if we start a move side here, I need to obviously extend some of these walls. Just scale these across so they kind of go on for longer. Okay, so if we start here, I'm going to animate my point of interest and position. Because my point of interest, as I bring my camera in closer, oops, my fault. As I bring my camera in closer to this, my point of interest is going to have to get shorter because it's going to get closer to this guy. So let's do that. Let's go to our active camera and let's do a movement with our tools here. So let's go, I want to orbit to maybe this side and I want to truck in. So I'll do orbit first and then track Z and get closer in here, okay? So let's go back and we'll kind of keyframe this. So this is my starting position. I'm going to go forward maybe 60 keyframes and we'll do the orbit first. Kind of set that angle that I want it to be at and then push in. If I push in first, it's going to mess up where my point of interest is. Because if I look after I push in here, go to my top, my point of interest, oh, it stays on it. Remember we had that discussion about how adjusting your Z will change your point of interest? Apparently it doesn't, and that is fantastic. If you do X, Y, it will, but Z won't. So it's still locked on there, which is great. So I don't have to worry about that. So if I go back and look, this is my camera move, right? And if I wanted to, I could smooth that out so it's not such a linear thing and kind of bring these Bezier lines over to kind of make it a smoother arc, right? Go back to my active camera, we can see what that's going to look like. I'm going to dial this down so it's not quite so intensive. Okay, so this is what my camera movement looks like. So once I get there, maybe I want to do an arc around it after that, right? So I can orbit. Actually, I'm going to hold shift while I do this so it only goes on this axis. I'm going to make this, I want to see those shadows more. So I might adjust where this goes. Let's delete these. Maybe not so far in. So I'm going to bring this back. I just want this to be bigger so I can see those shadows on the wall more. Okay, so that's my final movement, so it'll look like this. And let's go ahead, another 30 keyframes, and I'll orbit this way. I'm going to hold shift so it just goes straight across. There's no up and down movement in the camera. Okay, so I'm going to easy ease all these, which means it's going to come to a complete stop here, and then it's going to move over. If I want it to be one fluid movement, I would change these to not do easy ease. So if you select them and hit control, they go back to linear keyframes. So now it'll go right through that movement without stopping. Okay, so that's sometimes you don't want to use easy ease keyframes. So if I look at this, we can look at the difference. Here's what it looks like when everything is easy eased. Okay, let it kind of render through this really quick. I'm going to turn off motion blur because this is just, with screen capping and stuff, it's just Just kills the, and for some reason my computer hates life, so we'll even kick the quality way down. We just need to see the movement. So here's what it looks like when everything's easy eased. It comes and stops and then rotates, right? Move forward, slow down to stop, and then speed up to orbit. Well, we don't want that. So if we change this to linear, it'll go right through it without stopping and onto these layers and slow down and stop, right? Perfect. That's what we want. Looks good. So yeah, that's kind of building a room. You know, you could go online and Google like wall textures and give these wall textures by just downloading the photo and using the actual photo as your wall here instead of just a blank solid. I've seen that done before, which is kind of cool. Let's do one more thing here. Let's do a new composition. And let's build a little cube. Kind of the same method here. So I'm going to build just a gray cube with these walls. I'm going to make this 3D and we'll do motion blur. I'm going to scale this. Actually, let's not use a cube. Let's do this. Let's do a shape layer and make a rectangle. That might be easier because then we can see actual size instead of scale. So we'll do rectangle and we'll fill it. And we'll fill it with like a gray. And we'll do our path size to like 300 by 300. Actually, let's do a little bit bigger. 400 by 400. Okay. So we're going to use do the same thing we did for the walls, but we're just going to make a cube out of it instead of a room, right? So we know, if I go into what I changed, that this is 400 pixels, right? So if I set this as the back of my cube, and I set this back, actually we'll just keep that back, and I'm going to duplicate it, rename this front. We know that to position this has got to come, let me turn my 3D on for these layers, that would help. We know that this has got to move 400 pixels forward to be the front, right? Because we know it's 400 pixels large. Everything's going to be 400 pixel movements here. So if I move this towards us, negative 400, and we look at the custom view, you can see that back front, right? That makes sense. That looks like pretty good spacing for how this cube's going to turn out. Okay, go back to the active camera. I'm going to copy the front, duplicate it. I'm going to name this top. I'm going to rotate this on the X position 90 degrees. Okay, so this has been pushed forward 400. So this should be perfectly aligned with our front, which it is, right? So we need to push this back now 200 because it's going to sit in the middle. Okay, so let's do that. So position, we need to go negative 200. So we're just going to add 200 to that. It'll push it back. Look at our custom view. Okay, looks good. But it's still dead center in front of these. So we're going to have to move this up 200 pixels as well. Okay, so we'll go to our position. It's got to go up here 200 pixels. So 540 plus 200 is going to be 740. If you don't math well, you can always go 540 and then do a plus 200. Oops, I need to do minus 200, and then I'll shift it up to the perfect spot here. We can duplicate this guy, name it bottom, and we'll shift this down to 400 degrees, right? Because this is the very top. We got to go 400 to get to the very bottom. So we're going to go plus 400. Okay, cool. Now we got our top, bottom, front, back, and we need to get our sides. So I'm just going to duplicate this guy, and we will rename this left. We need to rotate that 90 degrees on the Y axis. And then we're going to have to shift this back 200 degrees and left and right 200 degrees for these walls. So for back, we'll change this. We're going to add 200. We'll go to negative 200. That'll center it. And then it's going to be our X position that we need to do plus and minus. So we'll do minus 200 here. And that'll shift it over to that left wall. Okay? The last wall, we'll duplicate our left wall. We'll rename this right. Go to our position. We're going to add 200 here to our 760, so plus 200. Oops, I'm sorry, it's going to be 400, so plus 400. And now we got our right wall. So we should have a fully formed cube here. So to see that, let's go to our active camera. Still looks like a box, right? Because we haven't angled around to see anything. Let's make a light. We might make a few here. And let's make it like we'll do like a 60% intensity point light. That's what we want. Color's good. We want it to cast shadows, so we don't want to do that fall off stuff that messes up before. Okay, so we got our light. I'm going to just put this up in the corner. I'm going to duplicate it and bring one to the other corner. Go back to our custom view, and now you can kind of see how this is taking shape. I'm going to duplicate these, bring them back here. I'm just going to kind of make a little array here. I'm going to duplicate them again, and kind of space them out here so we kind of have a little array of lights around this guy. Okay, so we see our cube looking good. So the big thing on here is if we go to our active camera, we can create a camera. 24 millimeters, fine. When we fly around this, I'm going to go to my top view and just make sure that we want my target to be right in the center of that camera. So point of interest, we need to bring it right in the middle. But we know if it's set there, we know this is 400 pixels, right? So to be super precise, we can go, I think it's minus 200. Oops, that's my position. We need to do point of interest. So this is going to set this to minus 200. That'll bring that 200 pixels back, which we know is dead center in this cube. And so now when we orbit around, go to my active camera, grab my orbit tool. Now when we orbit around, it's locked to the dead center of this thing, right? So we have this 3D looking cube, which is pretty sweet. Okay. So it looks cool. We got our array of lights. What if we add a floor to this? Okay, so let's do a new solid. Let's make like a brighter floor. And we'll kick on our motion blur in 3D. We'll rotate that on the X90, because that's what our floor needs to be. And we'll bring it down right. Actually, we know if it's center, we need to bring it down 200 degrees, right, to perfectly match, or 200 pixels, I mean. So we'll go to position. We'll do minus 200. Oops, I'm sorry, that was X. My brain's not working today. So 960 minus 200. Oh, that was Z, that was X. Okay, third time's a charm. 540 minus 200. And it's going to be plus because I don't math well. Okay, so now we know it's right, aligns perfectly with this box. So our box is sitting exactly on the same Y plane as our floor here. So I'm just going to extend our floor to make it absolutely huge. Actually, let's just go to scale and just like crank this up, because I want it to be endless essentially. I don't want to see the edge. And we can grab our camera now, and that's what we get. So our lights are a little much. We may have to kick those down. So there's not a real great way to adjust all of these at the same time. There's a sneaky way. Since we're not doing this in class, I'll show you kind of a sneaky way to do it, okay? If I go to new, null object, I'm going to name this light control. A null object is just an empty layer that you can throw stuff into and parent attributes from other layers into there to control multiple things at once, or movement or whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to slider control, and I'm going to put a slider controller on here. And this slider control I'm going to rename light intensity. Okay? And I'm going to go into all these lights. I'm going to hit UU on all these because I know I adjust my intensity. And what I want to do is I want to parent essentially the intensity here to the slider control in my effects here. Okay? So the way we do that is through the expression menu, which we haven't gotten to in class, but for what we're doing here, I think it'll really speed things up. So we're getting ahead of ourselves, but let's do this. Let's go to Light 6. I'm going to hit Alt on my PC and hold it. I think on Mac it's Option, but I'm going to Alt left click my intensity. And you get this little pick whip here. I can now click on my light control to bring up my slider and pick whip to that slider. Okay, so now it set my intensity to 0 here because that's what my slider is set to. Okay, so I'm going to do that with all of them. I got my light 6 done. I'm going to alt click my intensity here. This is essentially a parent. I'm parenting this intensity attribute to whatever, whatever I'm dropping it on. So I'll do that for my slider. And again, after you bring up your, like once I click light 2 and bring up my alt click here to bring up my expression, I have to re-click my light control to bring it up over here. I guess I could bring it up here, my slider here, so I always see it. So I'll pick whip that here. Bring this up so we can see this better. I will bring up my next one, pick whip that here. Again, I'm just linking all of these to that null object so I can adjust all of these together, right? Slider. Okay, so now they're all set to 0, so all my lights are gone because my light control here, where'd my effects go in that? They've disappeared. I don't know what happened to my thing. I need to get this guy out of here. Oh, I think ease and whiz is messing me up here, so I'm going to bring that down here. Okay, so we have our effects controls here. They were disappeared with us for a little bit. So I have my slider control on light intensity I created. Okay, that exists just in this null object, but everything's linked to that. So if I bring these guys up, all my lights are going to come up together, which is great, right? So now I can see a lot easier. The other nice thing is if I parent all these to, oh, I guess I can't, it won't let me parent either. That's not nice. Oh, parenting's not in here. I gotta adjust why this shows up the way it does here. If I right click columns, there we go. I need to add parent. Okay, so I can parent all these lights to my null here as well. So I'm gonna set my null just directly in the center of this. So I need to make my null 3D. I'm gonna rotate it to kind of just align with my box here. Okay, so right now, it's kind of confusing of where this null is. Let's adjust my position, probably plus 200. Oh, minus 200. I'll go to my top view and see exactly what this is. Okay, that helps a lot actually. So we're gonna do Z, we're gonna do minus 200. Let's center my anchor point. And now that we did that, I think it's gonna be kind of funky. So I'm just gonna go by look here because this isn't as important. But I just want this to be somewhat centered on here. Left, just make sure we're centered. Okay, again, this is not as important. The reason we do this is because we're going to parent all of our lights to this. So if we scale up this, oh, that's not going to work, is it? That's too bad. It works in other programs. Okay, so if we move this, though, now that all of these, oh, I guess we got to parent these. If we parent all of our lights to our light control, if we scale this up, that should move all these lights out, okay? So if I go to my camera 1, let's track out so we widen our view here a little bit. That just helps me give me control over some of these lights. I'm gonna move this in, make it more of a circle here. So if I want to, I can go to position on my null and bring all these lights left, right, up, down, right? So I'm gonna bring these up so they hit that a little bit more, and then I'm gonna scale these up so it makes it a little softer here. Okay, so hopefully that'll look a little bit better. I think that looks nice, right? If we want to, we can always change our fill color on here on our square. So if it looks a little bit too dark, we can hit UU, grab a new color, maybe a little bit lighter color. I'm just going to copy that hex value here. and I'm just going to go in here and paste that to all these and just change up all my colors. So I'm just pasting the new hex value in here. I just want to lighten this cube up a little bit color-wise. That dark gray was just a little bit too much. This looks a little bit better. You know, you could do a color. Again, you could do a texture. You could do whatever you want. Okay. So now the only thing left is that I would like some nice soft shadows around here. So we need to go into our layers, and we should have done this early on before we duplicated all these so we don't have to go back in after the fact. But it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if it'll look good. Let's go find out later. So we want to cast shadows on. I think we're going to have to change those for our lights too. Oh, no, we had cast shadows. That's good. Okay, material options. We'll turn cast shadows on for all of these. You can kind of see it's affecting our floor a little bit as we go. Cast shadows on. This is the long and tedious way to do this. Cast shadows on. It's starting to look pretty cool though. Cast shadows on. Cast shadows on. Okay. So that looks pretty cool. Let me kick my quality up a little bit so you can see it better. So we can rotate around this box now, and it looks like we have a normal 3D cube. Sorry, I have adaptive on. I need to kick that off. Clearly, this hates my computer now that we've done this. So that's what a full quality version of this looks like. I would recommend kicking your quality way down because I'm sure, especially the J-School computers will explode. Yeah, you get this really cool looking box. So I wonder now if we can make these even softer. If we go into our light settings and go to light options, you get a fall off distance, radius, shadow darkness, and diffusion. Well, diffusion is going to make things softer, right? So what if we increase this to 200 pixels? Let's do 300. Let's even increase it more. This again might even make it harder on your computer because it's softer light is harder to render. But you know what? Let's see what happens. So 300 light options, shadow diffusion 300. Oops, I already set that one. I'm on 2. Let's do that. Now I know which ones I haven't done yet. 300. 300. 300. Okay. So now I got a little bit softer light here. They're not so harsh. And again, I can always adjust those with my light control if I want them to be farther apart. Adjusting these. If I grab I can move them around. Oops. What happened to my lights? Why are my lights angry at me? I need to rename this floor, by the way. Light control. Okay. Oh, it's because it's just not rendering. It's because I need to change this to like a quarter quality to get this. Okay, so if I go back to my active camera. Yeah, the problem is just the quality setting I have. See, we get kind of a fall off here. You do see that line because it's kind of the horizon for that layer, so I need to stay above that line. But yeah, if we want to make this softer or wider, we can increase that. That really softens it up. Essentially what we're doing is, if I go to my top view, I'll undo that and go to my top view and show you what I'm doing. When I scale this up, my null, it's scaling this, which is making this scale up as well, like my outer layer. So I'll scale up, you can see what happens to those lights. They get farther away from my square. Okay. Go back to my active camera. So that might have been a little bit too much. I think that looks good. It looks nice. When you're at quarter quality, you get some of this like weird dithering stuff on the edges that look kind of dumb. But let's say, how would we do this? If we wanted our actual cube to rotate, how would we do that? Well, we can pick a kind of a master layer here. So let's set everything maybe to bottom. We'll parent all this stuff to bottom. And if we want our cube to move, we could hit R and rotate on our X or our Y, and now our whole cube will rotate, right? So that's how you would move the cube around all together now that we've kind of constructed that whole thing. So let's do a quick render or a quick move with our camera. I'm going to go to top view just to make sure. Okay, my point of interest is still dead center, which is great. I'm going to set my starting position of my camera. We'll do something like way back here. Okay, do that as my start. I'm going to set my position and point of interest because that's what's going to change. As I get closer, my point of interest is going to get shorter because I'm closer to the object. So I want to make sure I use these two. Whenever you're animating with these camera tools, I always use point of interest and position keyframes. Orientation and rotation. If you're rotating a camera like this, you're probably doing something wrong. So these are the two big ones. Okay, let's go ahead to like 5 seconds and let's truck this guy in and rotate him around to the other side. Okay, so by doing that, by rotating around to the other side, my camera is not actually going to rotate like that. It's just going to move right through. Because we got to think about this in keyframes, right? This is one solid movement. My camera started off, if I go to my top, my camera started off back here, right? And I'm moving through it because my ending position is on the other side. So it's just going to give me a straight line, which is not what I want. So if I select my keyframes, I'm going to have to use my Bézier'd lines to help me out. It's kind of hard to see, but it's right here. Okay, so if I bring this guy out, we'll see if it's kind of hard to tell, but I kind of want to arc it around. We'll see if that looks good. It's kind of hard to tell. It's kind of a trial and error thing. So let's go back to active camera. Kind of just scrub through this and see what happens. Yeah, that looks pretty sweet. So let's easy ease those. And let me start a real-time RAM preview here. So it's going to go slow through this. It's got to kind of do a little mini render, and then we'll watch it at full speed. Again, so this is quarter quality, and I'm on a beastly machine. I'm on a machine with 32 gigs of RAM and dual 980 Ti graphics cards. So it's like this is about as beefy as a computer as you can build right now, and it's still trucking. So there you go. There's our camera move on our cube, which is pretty cool. It's faking 3D. After Effects is not really a 3D program to do like stuff like this. It's called a 2.5D program. So doing stuff like this, you can fake it, but it would be much easier to use a program like Cinema 4D or whatnot. So you can do some stuff like this. It's just you saw how painful it is to do something like this in a Cinema 4D. It would literally take you a minute. And it took us, however long it took us, many minutes. So, okay, I hope that helps. I hope this recorded because I didn't really check. But we'll see you guys next time, and I look forward to seeing what you